Conference recording has been turned on.
Okay.
Hey, Glennie.
I'm sorry, I was about 5 feet 11 inches away from run this real quick. My big fan and Corona.
Wait a minute.
Hello, sir.
Hey, Greg. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing? All right.
When I came in, security guard downstairs wasn't sure how long he was required to stay So until the end of the general meeting, everyone's here, or until we all vacated the building in case there was an executive session?
Yeah, it's supposed to be till we all vacate the building.
Okay, so
I'll
questions?
clear. Yeah.
Thanks.
If you have any water, remember to pull your mask down first. If you have any water, make sure you. Glenn's got it. Say that.
Yes.
Who would like to read the resolution for Kareem Moore?
I think I'll ask already. I could alternate paragraphs.
No. Call to order Kent County Levy Court business at a committee meeting. Kent County Administrative Complex, 555 Bay Road, Dover, Tuesday, June 9, 2020. Levy Court Chamber, room 203 at 7 p.m. sharp. Mr. Pedamage.
Thank you, Commissioner President Banta. Just a word to the public before we begin tonight. This meeting is being held in person in the Levy Court Chamber at 555 South Bay Road. However, we're also invited folks to join the meeting via teleconference, and we ask that those folks keep their phones on mute. We also have some level of control of that here from the dais. Mr. Kennedy will manage that. And if and when members of the public who are joining us over the telephone wish to speak, they need to press *1 into their phone so that we can recognize them and unmute them so that they can present their comments. And when we get to those parts of the agenda involving public hearing, we'll invite the public again to share comments with us by pressing *1 on their phone and being recognized. This meeting is being recorded as an official process of the Levy Court. All rules of procedure adopted by Levy Court are in effect, and we follow the Mason's Rules of Order during our proceedings. Turn the floor back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Pedamage. We'll have the invocation by Mr. Howe, pledge allegiance to our flag by Mr. Hall, and the moment of silence for our troops and first responders, Mr. Sweeney. All rise.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the abundant blessings you've bestowed upon us, even when things are cumbersome and difficult, as the situation we're going through now. And we just pray that nevertheless, in spite of all that, you'll bless our proceedings so they're pleasing to you and they do good for our constituents. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The last few months, the United States has really faced some of the most difficult times as a nation. On Memorial Day, we honored the men and women who have given their lives in service to our country. Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor them, as well as our law enforcement members, our firefighters, paramedics, and other first responders who continue to work through this pandemic and are keeping a watch over peaceful protests, as well as putting themselves at risk against those who are looting and committing other acts of violence. While they're not listed here, we also honor those first responders, nurses, and doctors who have succumbed to COVID-19 virus complications and have given their lives in caring for others. Troop First Class Eugene Kenneth Barron from Connecticut State Police. Police Officer Cody Holt, Grand Forks Police Department in North Dakota. Police Officer Nathan James Lyday from Ogden Police Department in Utah. Deputy Constable Caleb Rule from Fort Bend County Constable's Office in Texas. Police Officer Waldis Johnson from Detroit Police Department. Sergeant Stephen Williams from Moody Police Department in Alabama. Police Officer Efren Colonel, El Centro Police Department, California. Sheriff Andy Clark from DeKalb County Sheriff's Office in Missouri. Sergeant Damon Gutzweiler from Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office in California. Dave Underwood from the Homeland Security Federal Protection Service in Oakland. EMT Chris Bonsall from Brandywine 100 Fire Company and the St. Francis Healthcare EMS in Wilmington, Delaware. Firefighter Joseph Nealon from the Newport Township, Ashley, and Hanover Township Fire Companies in Pennsylvania. Please keep their families and these gentlemen in your thoughts and prayers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We need a roll call to determine a quorum. Ms. Tanaka.
Mr. Angel,
Present.
Mr. Buxton,
Present.
Mr. Hall,
Present.
Mr. Howell,
Here.
Mr. Pepper, absent, Mr. Sweeney,
Here.
Mr. Banta.
Present.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 commissioners present. We do have a quorum. Need a motion on the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented, Mr. President.
Second.
Ready to move to the second. Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Angel to approve the agenda that you have before you in printed form. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Mr. Angel,
Yes.
Mr. Buxton.
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Howell,
Yes.
Mr. Pepper, absent, Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mr. Banta.
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes approves the agenda as presented. Agenda 20-8. Need a motion and a second.
Move to approve consent agenda 20-8, Mr. President.
Second.
Regular moved and seconded, Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Hall, I believe, correct? Thank you. To approve consent agenda 20-8. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Mr. Angel,
Yes.
Mr. Buxton,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Howell,
Yes.
Mr. Pepper, absent, Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mr. Banta.
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes approves consent agenda 20-8. First item under presentations, resolution 3794. Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of Commissioner Sweeney and myself, our father served in the Korean War. This is an honor and a privilege for us to read this into the record. Resolution 3794, honoring the Korean War Remembrance Day. Whereas June 25th, 2020 is the 70th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War in 1950. And whereas over 36,000 American men courageously fought against the communist invaders of Korea and gave their lives. And whereas over 103,000 American military were wounded, over 8,000 American military were declared missing in action, and 7,000 American military were taken in as prisoners of war. And whereas the state of Delaware also honors the 16 Delawareans who have fallen and have paid the ultimate price for their nation during the Korean War and now memorialized at the state and national memorials. And whereas this so-called forgotten war will never be forgotten in the minds and hearts And whereas the willingness of the armed forces of the United States of America to put their lives on the line for freedom for all people, peace in the world, is a lasting legacy to our great American spirit and honor. Therefore, be it resolved that the Levy Court of Kenton County acknowledge and support the state of Delaware in proclaiming June 25th, 2020 to be Korean War Remembrance Day.
Is that a motion?
That is my motion too, sir.
Need a second. Regularly moved and seconded, Mr. Angel, Mr. Sweeney, to approve Resolution 3794. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Mis- Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes, and I'd like to add to that very often this is considered the forgotten war, and I think that is a shame. However, we are countering that, and it's a very good resolution. Yes.
Mr. Pepper? Absent. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, and thank you, Commissioner Angel.
Mr. Banta?
Yes, certainly well-deserved, and I vote yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes approves Resolution 3794. And so we're going to do today a little bit differently because we are all under this situation with COVID-19. We're going to have the county administrator pick up the resolution and hand that to Mr. Gerard, who is over to my left, who they then come to the podium, make any comments he wishes to make. And we appreciate you being here, sir. We thank you for your time and service and for our nation. Thank you.
My name is Charles Garrett. I'm an 86-year-old Korean War veteran. I arrived in Korea when I was 18 in 1952. I didn't even know where Korea was. But my generation was still imbued with the patriotism of World War II. And we came and we did what we were asked to do. I'm here because I've asked a lot of governing bodies in Delaware to do this proclamation. This is the 70th year of the start of the Korean War. Every 10 years, there is a major celebration of such an event. But we know now, as you all know, the life circumstances have caused all public gatherings to close down. Commissioner Engel says, just now, the Korean War was often known as the forgotten war. But if we have no celebrations, we are truly forgotten. In fact, we're invisible. We just disappear. So, talking to a lot of my friends, and of course at my age, you talk slower. And we have to do something. I came up with this idea that I was going to ask all 50 governors to introduce a proclamation in their state to declare that date, June the 25th, as Korean Remembrance Day. I'm probably halfway there and more to come. But I'm a transplant. Delaware is my adopted home. And I said, I'm going to do more in Delaware. So the governor is going to do a proclamation. The House is going to do a proclamation. The Senate's going to do a proclamation. All 3 counties are going to do a proclamation. And it is actually possible that all 57 towns will do a proclamation. This will be the only state that such an occurrence will ever happen. So this becomes special for Delaware. And I really appreciate being here. And I have to say, it is a good feeling that you would do this for me and do this for Korean War veterans. So, but as an aside, long ago and far away, I once sat where you're sitting. Poetically, that means 30 years ago, I was an elected county official in New Jersey. Delaware and Kent County, of course, has kept the colonial title of Levy Court. New Jersey's county commissioners have kept the title of freeholder. And so I was I hate to say this, but I was a member of the board of chosen freeholders. Now that meant basically that you were a squire that held land free and clear. That's how you got to be in that position. So I have to say, my only advice to you all is to keep doing the good things you do and just do the right thing. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you. I don't want to go out.
Thank you.
Can I say something before you leave? Sir, can I say something before you leave? I'm right here. I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because it does matter. That hat that you wear, it sparks a conversation. It does matter. All I can tell you is that the 5 minutes that you spend here and the hours that you commit to doing this, don't think that it doesn't go unnoticed. Don't think that it doesn't matter. It does. And I'll tell you what else matters. Your service in that war matters. I don't spend a lot of time watching Netflix, but I do watch the military channel and the Discovery Channel, and I get to watch those revisitings of the wars. And I'm amazed at what some of the soldiers went through in that Korean War. That was, without hesitation, forget the name, the heroism and the acts of valor, just the toughness. It's very impressive. So share those stories. Thank you for coming tonight.
In the veterans world, there are veterans who put a lot of pins on their hats. Others don't put any pins on their hats. So this hat I've been wearing probably for 20 years. So in 2007, I'm in Incheon for the celebration of the landing in Incheon, which was the turnaround of the Korean War. So somebody was in front of me, he turned around and looked at me and said, "Let me see your hat." And it turned out to be a Philippine Korean War veteran. And she says, "Wait a minute, there's no Philippine pin on there." She took the pin off herself, and she put it on my hat. I can share that story with you. Thank you.
The first item on the agenda tonight is under public hearings. The first one is under Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to introduce Resolution 3785, the fiscal year 2021 sewer assessment rolls for Kent County Sewage Disposal District Number 1 as listed.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. We need to have a public hearing on that at this moment. So I will begin the public hearing unless any directors here want to make any comments in regard to this. Not seeing any. Open the public hearing on Resolution 3785, FY 2021 sewer assessment rolls for Kent County. Is there anyone here in favor? Anyone here in favor of Resolution 3785? Anyone here in opposition? Anyone here in opposition of Resolution 3785? Are there any phone calls?
Mr. Kennedy, do we see any hands raised? Star 1 if you're interested in speaking on this item. We see no. Mr. President, turn the floor back to you.
No phone calls? The public hearing is now closed. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve Resolution 3785, the fiscal year 21 sewer assessment rolls for Kent County Sewage District Disposal District Number 1.
Second motion.
Ready moved and seconded. Mr. Hall, Mr. Sweeney to approve Resolution 3785. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Mr. Angel?
Yes, no public opposition.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Hall,
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Howell,
Yes, reasons stated.
Mr. Pepper, absent, Mr. Sweeney,
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Banta,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes approves Resolution 3785. Next item, Resolution 3788. Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Resolution 3788, the KCSDD number 1, proposed sewer extension, East Dover area, Rowan Meadows subdivision. Ms. Diane, do you have anything for that, please?
Tonight is the hearing for people to speak for or against. This is the public hearing and the opportunity for the public to speak for or against this resolution. It is the extension of Kent County Sewage District Disposal Number 1 for the Roseanne Meadows subdivision, which has an estimated 159 equivalent dwelling units. Based on the information in the request, Sewer Advisory Board and staff recommend the approval of the extension to parcels ED-057.00-02-03.00, and it's a single parcel, and we would add that to KCSDD 1, East Dover area.
Ms. Galt. Gentlemen, any other questions for Ms. Galt? Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Open the public hearing on Resolution 3788. Is there anyone here in favor? Anyone here in favor of Resolution 3788? Anyone here in opposition? Anyone here in opposition of Resolution 3788? Mr. Pettimog, any phone calls?
If we have anyone on the phone line who wishes to speak, please press *1 and we will recognize you. Okay, Mr. President, we see no hands raised. I'll turn the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Pettimog. The public hearing is now closed. Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to approve Resolution 3788, KCSDD sewer extension, East Dover Roseanne Meadows, based on Sewer Advisory Board staff and no opposition.
Second motion.
Regularly moved and seconded. Mr. Angel, Mr. Sweeney to approve Resolution 3788. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Angel,
Yes, that's per my motion.
Mr. Buxton,
Just reasons stated.
Mr. Hall,
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Howell,
Yes, reasons stated.
Mr. Pepper, absent, Mr. Sweeney,
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Banta,
No opposition, I vote yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes approves Resolution 3788. Next item, 3792. Mr. Buxton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe Diane will be coming down here. You want to explain things again? Ms. Gold, sure, go ahead. Sure. Thank you for your help there. Resolution 3792, KCSDD number 1, proposed sewer extension, JMER Properties, Frederica South.
So this is a resolution for the extension of the Frederica South area of Kent County Sewage Disposal District Number 1. It's for JMER LLC Properties. It entails 3 different parcels that are referenced on the map and in the resolution. There are estimated 97 equivalent dwelling units. Feasibility study was prepared. The applicant accepted the findings of the technical feasibility study. The land use is not modified, and the land use is controlled by the town of Frederica. Both the Sewer Advisory Board and staff recommend approval of the extension for the 3 parcels.
Any questions for staff? For a motion, Mr. Buxton. I'm sorry. Got ahead of himself. Open the public hearing on Resolution 3792. Anyone here in favor? Anyone here in favor of Resolution 3792? Anyone here in opposition? Anyone here in opposition to Resolution 3792? Any phone calls, Mr. Pettibone?
Thank you, Mr. President. If anyone is listening on the phone line and they wish to speak, please press star 1 now. We'll recognize you. We see no electronic hands raised. Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Pettibone. Need a motion and a second on Resolution 3782. Once I close the public hearing, go ahead.
Roger that. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll make that motion. Make a motion that we approve Resolution 3792, KCSDD number 1, proposed sewer extension referencing JMER Properties, parentheses, Frederica South.
Second motion.
Regularly moved and seconded, Mr. Buxton, Mr. Angel, and Mr. Sweeney to approve Resolution 3792. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none? Lorraine Tanaka, please call the roll.
Mr. Angel?
Yes, based on staff approval and no opposition.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, based on reasons stated.
Mr. Hall?
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Howell?
Yes, reasons stated.
Mr. Pepper, absent. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, for all reasons stated.
Mr. Banta?
Yes, for all reasons stated.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes approves Resolution 3792. We will now close the public hearings, recess the committee meeting. First item, Administration Committee, Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Pettimage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You received in your packet a memorandum that described this proposal. Shoreline Vinyl Systems Company is moving to Kent County, and they purchased property on Lindbergh Woods Road, the former PPG property. And you may recall that in May of 2019, they were looking at the former Reichhold property, and back then, Levy Court did award an incentive grant and also tax abatement for that property on Fork Branch Road. But as we know now, that property did not work out. But in lieu of that, they did purchase the property at 1886 Lindbergh Woods Road, former PPG property, and they settled on that in January. And since then, they've been before you. Ms. Parkowski brought a request for a similar grant, incentive grant for Shoreline, which was approved by Levy Court previously. And tonight, what we're asking Levy Court to consider is a tax abatement for the property in question. For the tax abatement to be approved, there must be a minimum level of investment in the property and also a minimum number of jobs created. The proposed use of fencing manufacturing products requires a minimum investment of $500,000 in Kent County real estate and improvements, and at least 4 full-time positions created. With this proposal, the numbers are far more impressive than that. The property alone was $4.3 million in acquisition, and there's additional investment occurring at the property totaling all in, including the land cost, $17.2 million in investment and 85 positions to be created at the fence manufacturing facility. In addition, they've created a tenant space within the existing building, and they've improved that area, which is currently under lease. They've invested $250,000 in the tenant fit out, and the tenant has 40 full-time jobs in that facility. And so we've laid all that out in the memo, and there's a recommended motion for your consideration. Linda Parkowski is here, our Economic Development Director, and I'd like to ask Linda if she has anything she'd like to add to speak to you from the podium. This is a very exciting project. Linda?
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, commissioners. As Mike said, you did approve this for the old Reichhold site, and unfortunately that didn't work out for Shoreline Vinyl. but then they purchased the PPG site. So we were all planning to have a big celebration March 18th, and the governor was going to cut the ribbon, and you were all going to be there, and COVID hit. So they've stalled a little bit on getting their total employees up to speed. Some of their equipment is on ships coming in from China that got diverted during COVID. But they do have, at the present time, they have 4 full-time employees, which meets the requirement of the statute that Kent County has for tax abatement. And then their tenant, I hope you remember that, in order for them to buy PPG, they needed a tenant because the building was too big for what they needed. And so we found them a tenant in USA Fulfillment, and they have about 25 to 30 full-time employees working there right now. They got a big contract from Johnson & Johnson Pharmaceutical. They're a company out of Chestertown, Maryland, and they wanted to expand in Dover. So I am assured by the company MVP Shoreline that by the fall, they'll be up and running with their 85 full-time employees. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And like Mike said, this is an exciting project. It's a big win for Delaware. It's the first big manufacturing coming in to the state.
Commissioner Sweeney?
All right, thanks, Commissioner Angel. No questions, Linda. Just want to say thank you for your hard work. I know you stuck with this and kept with them when Reichhold fell through. So congratulations and thanks for that.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Linda, also, they said they're going to employ 40 full-time positions, and with the getting the tax abatement, they're going to have to add 4 new employees. So it'll be actually 44 employees then by the time this takes place?
There's 4 full-time employees working there at this present time.
Well, and according to the motion, it's for at least 4 new employees.
Yeah, and that's
okay.
for
Okay.
it's a new company to Kent County.
Just want to be sure.
There are 4 new ones. Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your hard work, too.
Linda, one
Commissioner
Commissioner.
Sweeney?
So Linda, there's actually 2 companies coming into PPG, correct?
There's actually 3.
3. So
this
the
worked out.
Shoreline's bringing in 85, and they're the ones that have the 4 employees.
So the way it worked out, Shoreline Fencing, what vinyl, was in Denton, Maryland.
Right.
They had a vendor that they bought their product from Utah, and that was National Vinyl Products. That's MVP. And they are the big manufacturer. So they decided MVP wanted a presence on the East Coast because they were shipping most of their product to the East Coast. So they combined with Shoreline and started looking for properties together because they didn't want to have to ship by truck all this product from Utah all the time. And Shoreline was one of their biggest vendors that they were supplying to. So they decided they were going to go into this joint venture in a building together and buy a building. That's when they looked at Reichhold, they looked at Fredericksburg, Maryland, finally decided on PPG. So there's 2 companies there. Then those 2 companies needed a tenant. And then USA Fulfillment, which was in Enterprise Park in Dover, is now leasing part of the PPG building. And then they formed an LLC to buy the building. So there's 4 companies total, if you really.
So the total is 85 new employees for
Shoreline
Shoreline,
MVP,
and then
yes.
another 40 with the USA Fulfillment.
Right.
So we're looking at 120 employees.
Right.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner, any other questions for Linda? Move this forward to the business meeting. 6 up, excuse me. Comments on this one item?
If there's anyone on the telephone line who wishes to speak on this item, please press *1. We have one commenter. Is that right, Mark? Whoever pressed *1, you have the floor to speak. Please begin by introducing yourself.
caller whose telephone number ends in 3189. You're recognized.
Overall, my only comment was on the last item. We are not getting the conversations that are not being directly entered into the mics. In the previous two orders of business, the discussion away from the mics or the podiums were not picked up. That's my only comment.
Thank you very much, sir.
Are there any other callers who wishes to address Levy Court on this matter? Please press star 1. Okay, we see no further hands raised, Mr. Chairman. Turn the floor back to you.
One more call for public comments. Seeing none, hearing none. Mr. President, back to you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Buxton.
Mr. President, thank you. As Ms. Kiefer's coming down, Mr. Kennedy, my understanding from the last caller, it appears is that right now what I'm saying is not being heard. Is there a way to verify that? In fairness to the caller who essentially took the time to say it's important to them. So if you're telling us that it's nothing on our end that you can verify, then that's perfectly fine. I just want to make sure we troubleshoot it. So you think we're good?
I think what the caller was saying was that the previous item that Ms. Gold was addressing, he couldn't hear her from the podium mic. So the only thing we'll do is just ask you to pull the podium mics a little bit closer so he can hear you. But he did hear our conversation because he did press star 1.
Thanks for clarifying. All right.
The item before you now is round 24 of the Ag Preservation Program. This year, they forwarded 13 properties to us. 6 of them...
Ms. Kiefer, might have to pull the microphone down.
Will that tilt? There you go.
Okay. Now? Okay. 13 properties were forwarded to us. 6 of them meet our criteria for funding. Levy Court budgeted $200,000 toward ag preservation in this fiscal year. So staff would recommend, if Levy Court is so inclined to expend those funds, that it go toward those 6 properties that meet our criteria. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Gentlemen, are there any questions in regard to this? As we've stated in the past, made some significant changes to how we address this issue, taking the politics out of it, kind of somewhat erasing the name so that it just fits into a formula, and then we get a pure recommendation. So, so that's the point I make. If there are no comments, then Commissioner Sweeney.
Just one clarification for anybody that's looking at this document. The LESA is the score, correct?
Yes.
And then this is a total of 886 acres that
Yes.
are being put into perpetual ag preservation.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
No other comments in our committee right now. I'd say we just make a recommendation to adopt the staff recommendations, move it forward to a public, to the next meeting. It looks like we have 6 hands in favor. There's nothing else to discuss. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make comment? Anyone in the viewing public? All right. Mr. Pettit-Mosh.
Anyone on the call, if you would like to be recognized, please press star 1 on your phone at this time. Mr. Chairman, we see no hands raised. Turn the floor back to you.
All right, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton. We'll adjourn the committee meeting, go into old business, which there is none. Under new business, first item, Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioners, any other questions before I read the motion? Seeing none. I move to approve a 10-year Kent County property tax abatement for the real property located at 1886 Linbury Woods Road in Kent County, Delaware, for and in support of acquisition, renovation, and restoration of the subject property by Shoreline Vinyl Systems Company, also known as doing business as 1886 Dover LLC, with year one of said tax abatement to begin upon receipt of written certification by the Kent Economic Partnership and Shoreline Vinyl Systems Company that investments of at least $500,000 in the facility be utilized for the qualified activity and the hiring of at least 4 new full-time employees at the facility and been completed in accordance with all applicable provisions of Kent County Code, Chapter 191, Article 6, as amended.
Second.
Got it.
Second.
Regularly moved and seconded. Mr. Angel, Mr. Hall, to approve the request for property tax abatement. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none. Lorraine Tanaka, please call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper, absent. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Banta?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes. Approves request for tax abatement to Shoreline Vinyl Systems Company. Next item, number 2, Mr. Buxton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the authorization of expenditures of the Kent County FY20 budgeted funding for agricultural land preservation totaling $200,000 as the Kent County contribution for the purchase of development rights for the properties included in Table 1 in the memorandum from the staff dated May 28th, 2020.
Second the motion.
Regularly moved and seconded by Mr. Buxton and Mr. Angel to approve the funding for the agricultural land preservation program as presented. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper, absent. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Banta?
Positively, yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes. Approves the motion as presented by Mr. Buxton. Next item, Mr. Angel, under other business, would you handle item number 1, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to go into executive session immediately following the business meeting for a preliminary discussion on-site acquisition for a public-funded capital improvement, legal strategy session regarding collective bargaining or pending a potential litigation, and personal matter pursuant to 29 Del Code 10004B2, 4, and 9.
Second.
Regularly moved and seconded. Mr. Angel, Mr. Sweeney, to go to executive session immediately after this meeting, from which we will not be returning. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper, absent. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Banta?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
Thank you, Lori. 6 affirmative votes moves us to executive session from which we will not be returning. Item number 2, Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to go into executive session meeting following the committee meetings of June 16, 2020 for preliminary discussion on site acquisition for publicly funded capital improvement, legal strategy session regarding collective bargaining or pending or potential litigation, and personal matter pursuant to 29 Del Code 10004B2, 4, and 9.
Second motion.
Regularly moved and seconded to go to executive session on June 16, 2020. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper, absent. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Banta?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
6 affirmative votes moves us to executive session on June 16, 2020. Informational items. Mr. Pettibone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just let the commissioners know for the executive session that will follow this meeting, We're going to stay right in this room so that we can maintain distances. We'll take a brief intermission and let the room clear, and then we'll proceed with the executive session. It'll be a brief one. And the second informational item, it's come to my attention that President Banta will be celebrating his birthday on Monday, which will be the day before we meet again. So I think it'd be appropriate if we, acknowledge his birthday by singing him happy birthday right now. So will the commissioners join me in singing happy birthday to President Banta? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Brooks. Happy birthday to you.
It's been a lot of fun, guys. I appreciate that and appreciate your cooperation for 24 years. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to say I hope I look as good as you do at 69.
I doubt that you will, but have a good hairdresser. We think that's funny, right? So anyway, any other informational items? Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, sir. So I was helping a friend who happens to live in President Banta's district last night today, and found out that the state of Maryland Department of Transportation owns 115 acres of land that stretches from the town of Maryland to the town of Smyrna. That's 60 feet wide and 13.3 miles long. So if you look at the Maryland line now at Marydale, it goes all the way up to Smyrna, goes over 60 feet, goes back to Marydale and down again. It's part of an 1873 railroad line that went defunct back in the 30s and 40s, and that property has been in existence. And it just so happens that this resident the land has overgrown into her yard and wants it pushed back. So we found the MTA in Maryland is going to send somebody into Delaware on Friday to look at the property and probably push back some land, but that goes through President Banta's, Commissioner Hall's, and Commissioner Howe's districts. And I'm going to be trying to work with the MTA and with DENREC to get that land turned over to DENREC as part of the rail to trail program.
So just for my edification, are any of those people that live in that area inter-district and capable of voting for you?
None.
That's good. That corrects any problem that might exist. So any other informational items? Any public comments? Any public comments?
If anyone's on the telephone line and they want to make a comment, please press star 1. See no comments on the phone.
We must be doing good. Any commissioner comments? Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to wish Capital School District the best, trying to find a new superintendent. I was part of that way back when I was on the school board. It's an undaunting task, so I hope they have the foresight and insight, because we collect the taxes for the schools and they request it when they need it. So also I would like to just have a quick moment of silence for Patrick Lynn, who was a commissioner of the 3rd District. I'm sitting in his in that seat back in the 90s. He was also my former principal from Dover High School. His wife just passed, and the burial will be this weekend. So if we could have a quick moment in honor of Joan Lynn, please. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Regularly moved and seconded. Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Angel go into executive session, which will happen immediately after this meeting, and the room has been cleared. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none. Ms. Tanaka, please call the roll.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper? Absent. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Banta?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 absent.
6 affirmative votes goes into executive session from which we will not be returning. We are adjourned. Thank you for your indulgence and indulgence.
Oh, my gosh.
Conference recording has stopped. You will now be disconnected by the leader. See, 6, 9.
Lori?
Yes. Yes, there's some others coming down your way. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
No, they don't have to be locked. Just make sure no one comes in. Okay, we ready? Oh, okay.
I'll just get them.
The information about to be presented, of course, is an executive session. And once you have heard it, you can remember it, but you are automatically authorized not to discuss it further. So, Mr. Fedemaj.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll begin, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Quiella and also ask the attorney, Craig Eliason, to speak if he has some advice for the levy court. Today we received word from the Public Employment Relations Board that there was a filing made by the local union 781, which is the paramedic union, alleging an unfair labor practice with respect to the approval of a 1% cost of living adjustment for all employees. The item has been filed for what's called a declaratory statement from the PERB board, the state board that deals with these public collective bargaining issues. And so Mr. Quiella has forwarded it to Mr. Eliason. I'm not sure Mr. Eliason had a chance to fully digest it yet, but we thought it was important to at least have a discussion with each of you so that you're aware of it, number one, together, and number two, that you realize that it's a sensitive matter, that if anyone approaches you and asks you a question about it, you should have no comment about it, and that would go for the media or any employee or anyone else. And so because these came electronically, they could be FOIA'd, and you know, a media person could get a hold of this and start calling people. We just want to give you a heads up so you weren't caught off guard with any kind of inquiry about this. And I think I'll stop there. I'm going to ask Mr. Quiella if he has a few comments to share with you about the complaint.
Mr. Fedemaj, if I could just eject one thought, and we discuss this at leadership. We're not going to discuss this item here in this room right now. The discussions may come at a later time, but right now we're gathering information in regard to what is occurring, so all of us are informed at the same time, but we're not going to discuss it here. Okay, thank you. Mr. Quayle.
So Mike did a really good job of reviewing what the declaration, requested declaration is. It's born out of some of the, not only the 1%, but some of the discussion during the MOU consideration earlier in the month. And it's an anticipation of collective bargaining. As you know, the contract with the paramedics will expire at the end of June. And so they're doing a preemptive maneuver, I'll call it, to make sure that it will be difficult for the county to negotiate wages with that union as we have in the past, which is to often tie it to what the rest of the employees make. So I would consider it, I don't know if Craig has had a chance to review it, a strategic move to avoid that, but it was prompted by the 1% for all employees as well as that MOU discussion. Craig?
Yes, I just gave it a cursory review, came across my inbox today. I really haven't unpacked it in any detail, but I agree, it's a tactical maneuver to try to enhance their position in the collective bargaining to come.
Did you want to talk about the arbitration as well?
You might as well, while you have the floor.
It was a banner day for AFSCME's attorney because in addition to filing the PERB request for a declaratory statement, which does require us to have a response to them by, I think, next Wednesday. That's why I wanted to make sure we told you today. So Craig and I will be working on that response back to them where somehow or another we have to make sense of the convoluted way that their attorney presented the information because there's no direct statements. It's really just a lot of innuendo-based, I think, from the Levy court meeting they heard both nights. So.
Agreed.
It's going to be very interesting. But in addition to that, they did, they filed a grievance on the P-4-2, which is the building closing policy that you did a few years ago, or a few months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, time flies, where you approved a maximum of 80 hours. They did file a step 1 and 2 and 3 grievance, and today did file for arbitration on that. Now, it's unclear from us what their exactly, because as you may recall, they originally proposed the 80 hours. So we're not sure what kind of grounds they have, but we will see. We also got a grievance from the wastewater union, CWA, about the same thing. They proceeded to step 1 and 2, and we had our step 3 meeting today. They've indicated that they will be taking it to arbitration as well. Now they're seeking a, at least in the discussions today, they want 160 hours rather than 80 hours. And they had proposed that they take the 80 now and 80 in calendar year 21. And so that was a proposal, at least today I told them I didn't think that was something that commissioners would likely support. They want some money too, and minimum benefits. But they've already negotiated their contract, so they'll just have to wait till that one expires to get any more money. So I did want to alert you in case you get contacted by any of the members about those actions. And as Mike pointed out, it's important for you to defer any information or any requests or any conversations that involve unions, union members, their benefits, their pay, their conditions of employment to the personnel office and the county attorney. Back to you, Mike.
That's essentially what we wanted to accomplish, give you awareness of the situation, and so you knew, weren't caught off guard. And we'll have more information as the process unfolds. Obviously, as Alan mentioned, on the first item, there's a response due next Wednesday that Craig will be
Yes.
working on, and then we'll see where that goes. If any of you, well, I was going to say, if any of you want to see the complaint, then we could provide it. Okay. Anything that we can do for the commissioners at this point? That's it. So we'll adjourn the executive session then? Yeah. Okay. All right, thanks, Alan. Thanks for sticking out. I know, broke tradition.
So the first protest, it started at Riding Village and walked